To all those people watching, I like to remind everyone that this video is not made for kids. It's for older fans and adults. Enjoy the fucking video! Bloomer was very excited. A group of athletes were having a special ceremony at the big station in Tidmouth. They were to take part in the Olympic Games that was to be held in Paris, France, and they will be representing Britain in all the games. Gordon was given the honour of taking them to the airport to catch their plane to London for Paris. Along the way, many people would come out and cheer them on at all the stations and on the side of the line. The chairman of the Executive Council of Tidmouth gave his speech and concluded, "We will cheer for you as proud Sudrians who will be representing not just Great Britain, but Sodor as well," he concluded. Everyone clapped and cheered, and the engines who were there, including Bloomer, whistled for the Olympians as Gordon puffed away with his special train that is called the Olympic Sprint. After Gordon had gone, Bloomer carried on with his work, pulling enthusiast trains to various branch lines around Sodor. "Hey, what fun that was," he sighed as he puffed along the line. "Would you be cheering them on, driver?" he asked. "I'm not at all fussed over the Olympics this year, to be honest," replied the driver. "Why not?" gasped Bloomer. "I used to be all for it ever since London hosted it back in 2012. But ever since then, things went south over on the mainland that the spirit for all had just vanished." Bloomer understood what his driver was saying, but then he remembered something. "You know, I was like that once. I'll tell you about it." And so this was the story about Bloomer and his Olympic spirit. If you ever visit the island of Sodor and are interested in the stories from the various railways, then you should visit the Railway Archives. It's a treasure trove of stories over the years with all of the engines across the island of Sodor, big or small. Let's take a look at all the stories that are a blast from the past for the engines of Sodor. The year 2012 was an exciting time on the island of Sodor. The Olympic Games were being held in London, and with that there was some exciting news. "The island of Sodor," declared the Fat Controller, "will be welcoming the Olympic torch on its relay after it visited the Isle of Man." All the engines whistled in excitement, all except Bloomer, who didn't look too interested. "And I'll be choosing an engine to carry the torchbearer to all the places around the island," he added. Later that night, the engines were wondering who would pull the torch. "It ought to be me," declared Gordon grandly. "After all, the Olympic Games are about speed, and it makes sense for an engine like me to carry the torch and its bearer." "Well, the Olympics is also about strength, Gordon," replied Murdoch. "So maybe I could be chosen?" "Pah!" scoffed Gordon crossly. "Why should they choose a scruffy mixed traffic engine who isn't even allowed on the mainland?" "Well, I don't know why you think you'll be chosen, Gordon. You claim that you're a fast engine, but you barely pulled the express that much this year, and lately you've been pulling local trains." Murdoch laughed. Gordon blushed with embarrassment, but then he said, "So, at least I have some years left in me. You weren't built for speed." "Well, if you were chosen, Gordon, don't go about creating another hotbox." Gordon fumed. But before he could say anything else, Bloomer spoke up. "Oh, would you be quiet about the blooming Olympics for once?" he snapped crossly. The other engines were surprised by Bloomer's response. Usually he'll be so cheerful. "They're just an overglorified sports gear that just comes and goes every 4 years. "That may be true," replied Henry, "but the Olympic Games are more than just that. The Games bring unity to everyone." "Oh, don't give me that rubbish, Henry," scoffed Bloomer crossly. "If the Games bring unity, tell me, what's so united about the attacks that had happened in London the day after the Olympics was announced, the riots last year, and even Gordon Murdoch's petty attitude over some torch?" The engines were silent, but it was enough for Bloomer to be convinced, and then he went to sleep. Bloomer is the oldest engine that works on the Fat Controller's railway, and he has seen many things over the years that convinces him that the world is a dark and dangerous place. He hadn't heard of the Olympics until a year after he was found in the sheds in Scotland by the late Sir Charles Topham Hatt. Bloomer had never been excited about the Olympics ever since it was held in Montreal, Canada. As he pulled one of his enthusiast specials, he could see some of the stations all decorated in banners and flags of the Sodor and Union Jack flag. "Nonsense," he scoffed. He kept on complaining about the Olympics to those who were listening, but the engines were getting tired of his negativity and began to ignore him. But he was still complaining and the engines had had enough. "We get it, Bloomer," snapped Henry crossly. "You don't like the Olympic Games and that is fine, but stop spoiling all the fun for us. The Olympics does symbolize unity, and you will see that when the torch gets here." "I doubt that," muttered Bloomer. But it wasn't just Bloomer's negativity that was spoiling the hype of the torch coming to the island. Gordon and Murdoch were still arguing over who should take the torch and its bearer. "It should be me. No, it should be me," they argued. "Just stop it already," cried Molly as she puffed carefully towards a local train. "You don't get to decide who should take the torch, the Fat Controller does. It's bad enough with Bloomer's negative attitude spoiling the hype out of it all. Your constant arguing is hurting it as well." But the two big engines kept on arguing. Molly sighed and puffed away, leaving behind the two engines giving each other sniping words. Bloomer was resting in the shed while he was being checked over, ready for one of his enthusiast trains. Gordon and Murdoch's arguing had disturbed his rest. "Those two are at it again," he thought crossly. "Well, might as well listen to what they say." As he carried on listening, Gordon and Murdoch were still arguing. But then something from their argument had begun to draw onto Bloomer. "I want to pull the honor because speed represents the island of Sodor," argued Gordon. "It's not speed," replied Murdoch crossly. "Strength. We engines carry goods and passengers every day. That's the way to represent Sodor." Then Bloomer remembered Henry's words from the previous night and realized what he had meant. "Driver, might we have a talk to Gordon and Murdoch?" he asked, and then explained what it was. Gordon and Murdoch eyed at him, pulling alongside. "What do you want, Bloomer?" asked Gordon crossly. "I couldn't help but hear over your lively conversation," began Bloomer. "You both wanted to carry the torch based on your own ideas like speed and strength. But there's one thing that you both had in mind that it dawned on me. You two both want to represent the island of Sodor. That's unity. You both have the same goal, and I think whoever the Fat Controller chooses should focus on that. Maybe he doesn't need to choose one engine. Maybe he should choose all the engines that represent the island." Gordon and Murdoch agreed. "Funny, an engine who doesn't care about the Olympics at first began to see what it's really all about," chuckled Murdoch, and all the engines laughed. Then they heard a familiar voice echoing around the yard. "I quite agree." It was the Fat Controller. "Bloomer, you are definitely showing what the Olympics are about, and with your words, it has given me an idea. I won't be giving the job to one engine. I'll be giving the job to 3 of my engines. If the Olympic Games are about unity, then it would be fair to have all my engines and all the others to represent our wonderful island." The arrangements were made, and finally the big day came. The first stop for the torch was the Baron Furnace. OJ, the paddle steamer, had sailed from the Isle of Man with the torchbearer on board, and Gordon and Murdoch were chosen to doublehead the special train which would go as far as Crowbit's Gate. As the two big engines puffed along the main line, people were lined up along the fences near the railway to see the special train and the torch. They arrived at Crowbit's Gate with the scowl of the engines whistling with pride to welcome the Olympic torch at the station. As the torch was passed to the second bearer who would go as far as Pump. The passing crowd cheered and waved as the second bearer jogged past. She arrived at Kronk where Bloomer was waiting. As he passed the many stations, he could see the many people cheering and waving who were all different from each other, but they all represent one thing they were united for. Bloomer pulled into Wellsworth and the torchbearer passed on the torch to the next one who took it all the way to Tidmouth, where a crowd of people came to see it, including the Fat Controller. Speeches were made by the chairman of the Executive Council at the time, and the Fat Controller. He then concluded, "Over the years, we have seen much devastation that may not have showcased the spirit of unity, but I hope today has shown that we can be united even in the darkest of times. I wish the torch well as she makes her way back to the Isle of Man to get ready for her trip to Belfast in Ireland." And everyone cheered. They sang the island's anthem, and after many more cheers and photos, the torchbearer climbed aboard Duck and Oliver as they made their way to Alsborough ready for OJ to take the torch back to the Isle of Man. That night, Bloomer smiled. He didn't need to say anything to the other engines, for they all knew what he was proud of. "Oh, that was an exciting day," sighed the driver happily. "Perhaps I will give the Olympics a watch and a listen to this year. I want to cheer for my home regardless of what's going on because we're all counting on our athletes." Bloomer smiled.